What's up, folks? So now we are over a month into the Trump shutdown. And yes, it is the Trump shutdown because no matter what is said and no matter how much Republicans try to blame Nancy Pelosi and Democrats and gaslight Americans into forgetting how the government shut down, let's not ever forget that the government shut down in December of 2018 when Republicans, not Democrats, had control of the House, when Republicans had control of the Senate, and when Donald Trump, as he still is, was president. Republicans had total control when the government shut down. And Trump said in the Oval Office that he would shut down the government and that it would be on him and that he would take responsibility. So the fact that 800,000 government workers and their families, which includes children, are going without pay, are struggling to pay off their debts, to pay their housing costs, their rents, to pay for food and shelter, it is totally and 100% Trump's fault. Don't fall for right-wing gaslighting that says otherwise, and our complicit mainstream media that can't seem to stop carrying water for right-wing narratives. The government shut down because Trump and Republicans proved once again that they are incompetent. Trump is supposed to be some great deal maker, but he couldn't figure out how to make a deal with his own party to keep the government open. The government shut down 3 times. Yes, 3 times when Trump and Republicans still had full control of government. That is unprecedented in American history for the government to shut down multiple times under one-party rule. But that just goes to show you what a bad deal maker and a con artist and a scam artist that Donald Trump is and how incompetent his party is, which is one of the many reasons why Americans got sick of it, sick of the lies, sick of the gaslighting, sick of the incompetence, sick of the inability of Republicans to do anything for anyone but their rich billionaire class and investor class donors, and voted Democrats into power, into having control of the House. Trump failed to get his own party to pay for his wall. Trump ran around the country for 2 years, swearing up and down and promising again and again that Mexico would pay for his wall. Having failed to make a deal because he's a fake and a phony and a bad deal maker, art of the deal, no such thing, he's a terrible deal maker. Having failed to make a deal with his own party to fund his wall, having failed to seal the deal on his promise that he would secure $5 to $10 billion in funding from Mexico to fund the wall. And yes, that is the promise that he made. It's still on his campaign website today. Having failed at both of those, he is now holding the paychecks of struggling workers hostage, holding the American economy hostage, holding the well-being of the small businesses that depend on those workers who are going without paychecks to patronize them, holding the children of those workers hostage, trying to force Democrats to do what he couldn't do and get his wall funded. Having failed to get his own party to fund his wall, having failed to keep his promise that Mexico would fund his wall, Trump and Mitch McConnell, who are controlled apparently by Stephen Miller and Coulter, are now engaging in political terrorism. And yes, this is political terrorism, and Democrats need to call it out as such. Hostage taking is terrorism. That is a terrorist tactic. When you take hostages to make demands, that's what terrorists do. The American government has a long-standing policy that we do not cave to terrorism. We won't even negotiate with terrorists. Why? Because when you negotiate with terrorists on their terms, when you give in to their hostage taking, that teaches them that in order to get what they want, terrorism works, hostage taking works. Democrats are right to call this hostage taking, and Democrats and the American people, who, by the way, overwhelmingly do not support Trump's wall, are right not to cave to this political terrorism, and we need to call the Trump shutdown what it is. It is right-wing political terrorism. It's not okay. It's borderline evil because it's threatening the lives of kids and the well-being of kids. And it's not the way that we make policy, solve policy differences, or legislate in America. And we cannot normalize this as a way to legislate in America. We cannot normalize political hostage taking and political terrorism as a way to settle policy disputes and get legislation passed in America by giving in to Donald Trump, a pathological birther bigot and a Putin puppet who does not care about Americans, who is constantly lying to his base, and who only cares about himself, lining his pockets, and helping his treasonous, traitorous, pathological lying crime family. Donald Trump is supposed to be some big alpha male. He's supposed to be some great deal maker, but he couldn't make a deal with his own party. He's supposed to be some big alpha male, but he can't stand up to Coulter, who he is apparently scared of. He can't stand up to Fox News. He can't stand up to all the right-wing liars and fearmongers, including Stephen Miller, who is setting his draconian and racist immigration hardline policies. What kind of alpha male is that? What kind of deal maker is that? What kind of alpha male photoshops photos of himself to make his fingers appear longer? And yes, we now know that Donald Trump is doing that. Donald Trump is insecure, he's weak, and he and Mitch McConnell are political terrorists who need to reopen the government right now. Americans need to stand up to this and call this out for what it is. It is pure, unadulterated political terrorism, and we cannot stand for it. So I'm calling on everybody to call their congressmen, call their senators, call their representatives, call and write the White House, tweet, and let everybody know that this is political terrorism and that the American people are not going to negotiate with terrorists for a wall that we don't want and don't need. Landowners at the border do not want their land taken away for a wall that they know we don't need. We can secure the border efficiently and effectively with electronic fencing, electronic monitoring, which includes drones, hiring more border patrol agencies, and solving the humanitarian crisis at the border by streamlining our broken immigration system. We need more border patrol agents. We need more judges working asylum cases. We need more immigration workers to process asylum cases. The problem is that Central Americans who are suffering violence and poverty and extreme, terrible conditions in their home countries have found out that if they show up at our border with kids, they can be held indefinitely and then sometimes even released into the country. Of course, the country can't incentivize that, but we don't solve that by wasting American tax dollars on a wall we don't need, or evil policies like separating children from their families, including ripping breastfeeding babies away from their mother. That's not how we solve that. We don't solve it with political terrorism, hurting millions of workers and businesses, because Trump is a terrible deal maker and a liar who couldn't keep his promise to make Mexico pay for his wall. That's not how we're going to solve that. Trump and McConnell need to reopen the government. Then we need to have a serious discussion about how we can secure our borders and at the same time fix a broken immigration system that is in dire need of an overhaul and needs to be streamlined. And that includes not tossing out and deporting law-abiding undocumented immigrants who are contributing to our society, or dreamers who were brought here when they were kids and are here and are effectively American in everything but name only. And we don't solve it with political terrorism. We cannot give in to this. Trump and McConnell need to open the government right now, stop engaging in political terrorism, stop being controlled by Coulter and Stephen Miller, and stop trying to force Americans to pay for a dumb wall that we don't need, that Trump said Mexico would pay for. Open the government now. And Americans need to demand this. We cannot give in to terrorists, and that includes right-wing political terrorism. God bless America.